What happened to Boston police officer John O'Keefe on January 29, 2022? The night began as a typical Friday. John met some friends at a bar in downtown Canton, Massachusetts called C.F. McCarthy's. After he was there for a while, his girlfriend Karen Reed met him. Karen was a college professor and had been dating John for a couple of years. A little later that night, they walked across the street to another bar, the Waterfall. Also at the Waterfall were John's old neighbors and a fellow Boston police officer, Brian Albert. When the Waterfall closed at midnight, Brian Albert invited everyone over to his house for an after-hours party. And that's when things become much less clear about exactly what happened. Prosecutors say Karen dropped John off at the party, but instead of driving away, she threw her car in reverse, going 24 miles per hour for 60 feet, purposely running over John and then driving away to let him die in the cold. Meanwhile, Karen Reed and her attorneys say that never happened. John went into that party, he was ambushed, and then put on the front yard to die in the cold. They also claim the lead investigator planted evidence to frame Karen Reed for the murder. Tonight, we take a look at surveillance video and digital evidence tracking the movements of Karen Reed. Did she drive by the crime scene an hour before returning to the scene with two other witnesses? What does the DNA evidence prove in this case? We'll take a look as we continue to investigate the tragic death of Boston police officer John O'Keefe. I'm Vinny Politan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. And we are way into this case, right? It's been weeks that this thing's been going on, since April. And as I sit here tonight, I'm still thinking about this timeline. And it's always the way I try to organize a story that I'm covering and organize an alleged crime is, okay, do we have a timeline and do I understand it? Well, in this case, so far at least, it seems like it's a very vague timeline connected to the death of John O'Keefe. And partly because we've heard from so many eyewitnesses. And eyewitnesses give approximate times. And we've had some times of some cell phones, but what exactly does that communication mean? A text message? Does it place someone at a particular place at a particular time? Which leads me to the ultimate question here, right? And, you know, prosecutors have the burden. They need to prove this case. What time was this alleged murder? When did it happen? When did it happen? I think it's an important question. I think it's significant information. And in a case like this, where you have all these witnesses who don't see this happen, you've got to figure out how on earth could all these people coming in and out of the house, looking out the windows, not see this happen? Well, no one did. But what is the alleged time of this? I think it's important. The one thing we know about the world today is that there are cameras everywhere, right? Surveillance cameras, businesses, buildings, Ring cameras in people's front doorbells are everywhere as well. People have surveillance video on their yards. I mean, it's everywhere. So you would think it might be relatively easy to sort of pinpoint the window of time for this alleged murder. And I think that's something that we're going to look at tonight, this hour, based on some of the evidence today and putting it together with other things that we've learned. Because at the end of the day, another question is, does the prosecution have a clear story here that they're telling this jury? And you have to. You have to, especially in a case that is this long, with this many witnesses and this convoluted at times, confusing testimony at times. You've got to, at the end of the day, have a clear story. And let's see if they get any closer or got any closer today. Court TV crime and justice correspondent Matt Johnson is joining us live from outside the courthouse in Dedham, Massachusetts. Matt, great to see you. Today, I think we're finally getting into some of the areas where you get into physical evidence, timelines. You know, these aren't necessarily eyewitness accounts of what's happening, so there's something a little more tangible. So let's start with the DNA evidence. What did the DNA evidence tell us today?
Right. Vinny, nice to see you. So we're on day 24 of this 7-week-long trial so far. 62 witnesses have taken the stand and finally hearing from forensic experts, DNA experts. And today they were talking about the DNA that was collected off the alleged murder weapon, which is Karen Reed's SUV. There was a hair that we've already heard about that was collected off the rear quarter panel of the passenger side of the car. That was tested. And then there was also the casing of the taillight. Not the pieces of taillight that were collected, according to troopers, but the casing was collected for DNA. And these experts said that they matched. These 3 experts that took the stand said that it matched John O'Keefe's DNA profile and two unknown contributors. Take a listen.
Profile from the extract that you received as far as EO2, from the passenger side taillight of the vehicle. What, if anything, were you able to determine based on your analysis and SDR processing of that?
Yeah, so we determined that it was consistent with a mixture of 3 individuals, including at least 1 male contributor. So in this case, when comparing the John O'Keefe profile, assuming a mixture of 3 individuals, it is at least 749 million times more likely to be observed if it originated from John O'Keefe and 2 unknown unrelated individuals than if from 3 unknown unrelated individuals.
The mitochondrial DNA profile that was obtained from the sample, the hair sample, was consistent with the mitochondrial DNA profile obtained from John O'Keefe. So therefore, John O'Keefe cannot be excluded as a possible contributor of that hair.
Now, I know what you're thinking, because in a lot of cases that we cover, DNA evidence or cell phone evidence, that's the smoking gun in the case. But I was talking to the defense attorneys and also Karen Reed on the courthouse steps here after court today, and they didn't seem too fazed. This is what they told me. Reaction to the DNA evidence today?
It means nothing, which is why, that's why you heard us ask those questions.
John's DNA was on his clothes.
You're saying that. What was that, Karen?
John's DNA was on his clothes.
What are you thinking as you're sitting there during this part of the testimony?
That it's a waste of taxpayer dollars.
Have you made a decision whether or not you're going to testify?
Waiting on that.
Again, not fazed. The defense team says that this is actually proof in their eyes, in their opinion, that Karen Reed is being framed, because all to the media out here out front, they were telling once again their argument, the fact that there was that hair found in the rear quarter panel and it traveled more than 50 miles in a snowstorm on the back of that flatbed pickup truck. They can't get over that in their minds.
Now, when we talk about DNA on a murder weapon, usually we're looking for the defendant's DNA on the murder weapon, whether it's, a knife, a gun handle, something like that. This is different because we know it's her car. That's not in dispute, so you don't need to match her to the car. You have to match the victim. Now, the hair, I understand. The other DNA, did they talk about the source of it? Because it wasn't blood, was it?
They tested a sample of his blood. That's how they came up with that profile. But they didn't talk about the nature of the sample that was found on the casing of the car that it was compared to. But what stood out to me in that, Vinny, and I'm sure it did to you too, is the 2 unidentified other profiles that they couldn't match, along with John O'Keefe's.
Right, but they eliminated the investigators, Proctor and Buchanan.
Correct.
Okay. DNA evidence, I get it. Defense not worried about it, but if it wasn't there, the defense would be making a big deal. What about the cell phone data?
So cell phone data was another big thing that was talked about today. We had a Lieutenant Tully that was on the stand. He was Trooper Proctor's supervisor. Basically, he is the trooper that's in charge of all of the case evidence. And he was talking about going into and looking at data records of not only Karen Reed driving through the neighborhood and trying to pinpoint that, but then matching it up to cell phone pings and her cell phone data. So he was trying to put together a timeline, and alleging and suggesting that she drove past the body before she went to the McCabe's house, so she already knew where it was. The other thing that stood out with her cell phone data was the amount of phone calls that she did overnight to the victim, John O'Keefe. Take a listen to this.
Prior to those 4:45 a.m. phone calls, were there other phone calls that the defendant placed?
Yes.
And to whom did she place those calls and about what time?
Starting at 12:33 a.m. to 6:03 a.m., there were 53 phone calls from Ms. Reed to a phone number associated with John O'Keefe.
And in addition to those phone calls to Mr. O'Keefe's phone, what, if any, other calls did the defendant make prior to those 4:45 a.m. calls?
There were phone calls to her family members, to Jennifer McCabe, Kerry Roberts, Camaranos.
So those phone calls, the content of the calls, we haven't yet heard. They haven't been played for to the jury just yet. So a lot of people here at the courthouse that have been covering this for weeks on end like we have, we're wondering if that's how the Commonwealth is going to close their case in chief as we rapidly approach that at the beginning of next week, Vinny.
And when you say the content of the calls, voicemail messages, right? That's what we're talking about?
Voicemail messages, and from the pretrial hearings, we know that some of them could be angry voicemail messages left by Karen Reed, the defendant.
Yeah, I think you might be right on. That's the way they may end the case. You know, why would she do it? Well, take a listen, folks. But it is sort of a strange piece of evidence because these are calls allegedly made after the murder. Now, I want to ask you about one more thing because our guests, our insiders, have talked about this a lot. The Ford Edge. The Ford Edge. What is the significance of the Ford Edge, and how did that all come up today?
So it was brought up today with this, again, lead investigator that was on the stand, Tully, and he's with Massachusetts State Police, and he was questioned as to why they didn't go inside 34 Fairview, and he gave his answers and reasoning for that. But then he was questioned as to why he didn't search for the owner of a Ford Edge that a witness said was parked in front of that house, the Alberts home, between 2:30 and 3:30 in the morning. Here is his testimony on that today, and this is very key.
As the supervising investigator, did you do anything to investigate the circumstances of that Ford Edge being placed in front of 34 Fairview sometime between 2:30 and 3:30 in the morning?
Yes.
What did you do?
Well, we determined the veracity of that statement, and we want to make sure that the person who gave it is consistent and accurate. The person has given the statement multiple times, and it appears to have changed over those times. It also appears that the person observed this vehicle from a distance, and also the identification of a Ford Edge seemed highly suggestive the way that I had read the account of it.
Did you find out anybody in the Albert family, for instance, on the Ford Edge?
I don't recall off the top of my head if somebody...
Did you look at automobile registration records?
I did not know. The first was that this person saw a Ford Edge in front of 34 Fairview. The third story was a concern about the time. The third story was as he arrived, the Canton police had the street blocked off at about 4 a.m. and he places this Ford Edge outside the residence at a time before that. So we know through our investigation that the Canton police didn't arrive till shortly after 6 a.m. So the witnesses' times are off as well.
I felt like every single juror in that courtroom here behind me was taking notes when Alan Jackson said on cross and made the statement, well, yeah, one of the Alberts did own a Ford Edge at that point in time. And they're also planning on calling that witness in question, that's Lucky, the plow driver. He's going to be part of their case in chief when they present next week.
That's I think it's one of the crucial witnesses in this, and apparently investigators not trusting the credibility of what he is saying, and that became very apparent today. But a prelude to another big moment in this big trial. Matt Johnson joining us from Dedham, Massachusetts. Thanks so much, Matt.
Thanks, Vinny.
All right, I want to bring in a special guest who's going to help us out tonight. human behavior expert, jury consultant, Susan Constantine. Susan, great to see you. I wanted to bring you in.
Nice to see you too.
Yeah, I wanted to bring you in tonight because there was a really significant witness that everyone has been talking about for days now. They were talking about it for months in the buildup to his testimony. It's the lead investigator. I believe if the jury trusts and believes him, Karen Reed will be convicted. I also believe if they don't believe him and mistrust him, they could very easily find reasonable doubt. So I think he's an incredibly crucial witness. So I wanted to play some pieces of his testimony and get your take on what you're seeing in that testimony, in the way that he's testifying. Let's take a listen.
You took possession of Mr. O'Keefe's cell phone physically, correct?
Yes,
And you had access to Mr. O'Keefe's Ring account in that cell phone, is that right?
correct.
You indicated that you reviewed several of the videos on his Ring app on his cell phone, is that right?
Yes,
So you obviously had not only possession of his cell phone, you had possession of his login account information to get into the app on his cell phone, is that right?
I don't believe we had the password. We had his email account associated with the Ring.
Which means
Yeah.
some
So
way
you-
or another, you could get access to the Ring videos.
Correct.
And watch those Ring videos on his app on the phone.
Yes,
Which means you had full access to the app. You could keep videos, you could save for later, you could delete videos, you could do anything you wanted to within that app, correct?
yes, those are the capabilities within that app.
Trooper Proctor, did you delete any of the Ring videos ever from John O'Keefe's phone?
Absolutely not.
Did you delete a video of Miss Reed arriving to One Meadows at approximately 12:41 a.m. on January 29th, 2022?
Absolutely not.
You will agree, Trooper Proctor, that the video of Miss Reed returning home from 34 Fairview at approximately 12:41 a.m. is not there.
Correct.
As the case officer, you're aware that Trooper DeChico also reviewed some or all of those videos, correct?
Yes,
And he did that at your request.
correct.
He took notes of his review of those videos, correct?
Yes,
And you note that at 0041, which is a time relative to what DeChico was looking at on the Ring video, he indicated taillights from driveway, parentheses, I think she arrived home, in parentheses, correct?
correct.
0041 is what? What's that in reference to?
Just after midnight, the approximate time where Miss Reed will be returning from Fairview Road.
Okay, it's clear the defense is accusing him of deleting crucial videos in all this. What are you seeing?
So what I'm looking for is his baseline when he's answering these questions. The first two questions I'm watching to see if there's some rapid eye blinking to increase cognitive load. I did not see that. Where it started to fall apart, Vinny, when he was talking about that he had access to that app. When he was answering that question, you see a shift in his facial expressions, his demeanor. That's where he swallows. He has more of the eye closures, slight eye blinking, licking of the lips. All of these are more fear responses. And also I noted at one point where there was like a held breath before it came out. That's also a fear response. He also says absolutely not. That doesn't mean no. That just means he doesn't agree.
Okay, let's get to our next one. His connection to the Alberts and the McCabe's, two families that are connected to what was happening in the house that night. Is he or is he not connected to them? Let's take a listen.
I did not know the McCabe's. I don't know most of the Alberts, and I have little to no relationship with Chris and Julie.
That was a lie, wasn't it?
No, absolutely not.
You stand by that testimony?
Yes,
That you don't know at the time that you testified, that you didn't know the Alberts or any members of the Albert family?
they don't have relationships with them.
Okay. My question is, you keep going back to relationships. I'm asking you, did you testify that you didn't know them?
Objection.
I'll let him have it. Do you understand the question, Trooper?
I knew Chris, Julie, and Colin.
10 days before Mr. O'Keefe's death, you were texting with your sister about whether Julie Albert might be available to babysit for your own son, correct?
Yes.
So in fact, your relationship with the Alberts was close enough that you would consider leaving your own child in the hands of Julie Albert as a babysitter, as a caregiver for your toddler, correct?
I wouldn't say close enough.
Okay, what do you think about this in describing his relationship with the Alberts and McCabe's?
Well, you know, he's distancing himself from the Alberts for a particular reason, right? We already know that. But when he's answering those questions, he says, and this has been in dispute, is that he had no relationship with them. So with what he's saying in his own mind, that means I don't know them because I don't have this close relationship. The other thing that I noticed that when he is speaking, especially when he's under fire, you can see these very deep horizontal lines in his forehead. These are stressors, right? I mean, he's under a tremendous amount of stress to answer these questions correctly because everybody is watching him. He shows these slight little exasperations after he makes a statement. You'll see his mouth kind of go in an exasperation. So when I'm looking at his overall demeanor, the things that bother me is that when he doesn't really answer the questions yes or no, they're kind of these very inconspicuous. It could be a yes or it could be a no. So it kind of bobbles around a little bit. So it's not firm enough for me to make the assessment that he is being truthful when he's saying yes or when he's saying no. It's ambiguous. So there's a reason for that, and I'm sure we're going to find out probably at this next clip.
Well, now let's talk about Colin Albert, who is the 17-year-old. There's a picture that defense brought out with him with bloody knuckles. They clearly are pointing a finger at him as being involved in something. But here he is talking about Colin Albert.
Isn't it true that in that report, you list the individuals that were at 34 Fairview as Brian, Mary Kent, Emily Fabiano, Sarah Levinson? Is that correct?
Yes.
What's the one name that was left out of your report on that list?
Objection.
I'll allow. Was there one name left out? Break that down, Mr. Jackson.
Sure. Isn't it true that in your report, you excluded the one name, Colin Albert, from the list of individuals that were in your notes?
Yes, because he arrived later in the evening. The other females were there from the start.
Okay, how about that?
Yeah, so what I'm looking at is when he answers his questions with a very firm yes or no. You know, there's this punctuation when he says it. But the issue that I have, especially when he's answering the no, he's searching. He's like looking all the way up. He's going around. He's trying to pull these visual memories out. And then he goes, no. So was it that all of a sudden he was able to see all the people there and then he was firm on his answer no? But again, then he's questioned about this other person and that wasn't entered into the mix, right? So who was he actually seeing? I think if I were the state attorney, I'd want to see, well, who are you looking at? Who are you actually seeing? Because when we're looking at those eye movements are really important because it does tell you about how he's replaying the tape in his mind.
Susan Constantine giving us great insight. Thank you so much, Susan. We will do it again. Appreciate it. When we come back, we're going to bring in our trial insiders, plus coming up next hour. Newly released documents in the Madeline Soto murder investigation are revealing some very disturbing details about 13-year-old Madeline's relationship with her mother's boyfriend and his alleged abuse. Our experts will take a look at it tonight. The next episode of Accomplice to Murder. Vicki Monroe goes on trial for hiring her own son to kill her husband, Jerry.
You wouldn't think that for $3,000. Not in a million years. Leslie Emerson could not have been the mastermind behind this.
She needed him alive. She didn't need him dead.
She was a Class A manipulator.
I just lifted up, closed my eyes, and shot.
Accomplice to Murder with Vanny Politan. All new episode, Sunday night, 8/7 Central.
Only on Court TV.
I observe a large black SUV here on Washington Street.
And the large black SUV that you observed, is that consistent with what you've observed of the defendant's vehicle?
Yes.
And if you could describe to the jury, as far as when I asked Ms. Gilman to press play, what is that vehicle going into?
It's going to continue north on Washington Street through the intersection on Sherman and continue north on Washington Street.
And what, if anything, is sort of in that directionality as it continues off of the screen to the left?
Be heading towards Temple Beth Abraham. At approximately 12:17 and 56 seconds, you'll see a large black SUV travel from left to right on the screen, which again would be northbound.
And again, left to right on the screen, just for orientation purposes, what is in the direction from left to right on the screen as far as of any significance to this?
As you continue north on Washington Street, you would, I believe the next intersection on the left is Dedham Street, which one could take to get to 34 Fairview Road.
All right, folks, now we're in a place where maybe we can put together a little bit of a timeline based upon some of these things that are being laid out. Let's do that right now. Let's take a look first. We begin at 12:15 a.m. Karen Reed, John O'Keefe in her car, driving north on Washington past the library at the intersection of Sherman. You see the little red light and you see the surveillance video. Okay, that makes sense. We're starting to make some progress here. 12:17, Karen Reed and John O'Keefe drive north on Washington past the Temple. Okay, they're making their way. They're going in the direction of the Alberts house. At that point, prosecutors say they could have turned left onto Dedham Street. From Dedham Street, they maybe made a left turn onto Cedar Crest and a left turn onto Fairview. I don't know. I don't think it really matters, like what route they took getting there, other than the fact that there's no more videos from anyone's house. That's a little problematic. But here's what I found very significant in trying to put together a timeline. When did this murder take place, according to the prosecution? Take a listen to Lieutenant Brian Tully now talking about the information they're getting from the cell phone, which has times associated with it. Take a close listen.
First, we're looking at the area of the town of Canton. I've placed different landmarks, again, to give context to what we're talking about here. You see 34 Fairview Road as a yellow house icon, 1 Meadows Ave, Canton as a darker color, and the Waterfall Bar and Grill as another icon. Now off to the left, just west of Route 95, which you'll see running here, you'll see a red triangle, which I use consistently as the antenna, and a series of letters and numbers next to them. So next to them is the numbering system that Verizon assigns to that antenna. So in this instance, we're looking at ENB, which is the antenna acronym, and specifically 57171.
And to be clear, as far as that marking with the red triangle, the ENB ID 57171, that is the antenna that the handset or the defendant's cell phone is connecting to at that point, correct?
Yes, and I always try to be clear that that is the antenna. That's not where I'm saying the handset was.
So the handset is somewhere in that vicinity based on your training experience, is that correct?
Yes, 12:35 to 12:37 a.m.
And again, if you could, using the laser pointer before you, direct the jury's attention to what, if anything, of significance or relevance you depicted in this representation.
So those same icons appear as about the locations relative to this investigation. You'll see another red triangle here close to Route 95, which is NEB ID 57286. And during this time period, the handset associated with this account communicates with that antenna.
And from the locations of significance or relevance as far as ENB ID 57286, which of them is it closest to in this division?
It's just north of 34 Fairview Road. This comes from one call that occurred at 12:38 a.m.
And as far as, if you could, again, using the laser pointer, direct the jury's attention to what, if any, other locations you identified or signified in this representation.
Again, same icons further south to bottom. The antenna is located here at the intersection of Route 93 and 138, and it's ENB ID 57021.
And of those locations of interest that you signified within this slides, where is ENB ID 57021 in relation to those?
If you're thinking back to the previous slide, so now we've moved a little bit further east. Here's Fairview Road, and here is 1 Meadows Ave.
Okay, let me bring in my guests, our insiders joining us tonight. Karen Read supporter and creator of the Justice for Officer John O'Keefe and Karen Read Facebook page, Nick Rocco, and the YouTuber behind Yellow Cottage Tales, Kevin Lenahan, with us. Okay, Kevin, so am I interpreting this evidence correctly that really wasn't like being delivered in an easy way to consume, okay?
Never is.
Well, no, I watch trials year after year, month after month here on Court TV, and sometimes it is very clear. It was clear down in South Carolina in the Murdoch case. Okay, so is the murder window here 1235 to 1238?
Yeah, I mean, as far as the murder window, we also have that John's phones. We're getting, see, some of this stuff, we're getting these pieces of the puzzle, right? And we have to just patiently wait for the rest. And a lot of it's going to come from Trooper Garino.
But she's home at 1241, right? She's home at 1241. That's the missing videotape, the ring video, 1241. Trooper DeChico.
Seems to be, but Proctor indicated 1234 the other day too. So I'm not sure until we see the actual.
Okay.
You know, they're going to.
So explain this to me, and then we'll get Nick's take on this. The question I have is, this is not a super large window of time, but Ricky D and Ryan Nagel and Heather are behind them, right? Like, how long are they there? Wouldn't they have witnessed this then? If it's this small window of time? Why not?
You're talking to Nick, right?
No, I'm talking to you, Kevin. I'm
sorry. No, I mean, my understanding would be, so they arrived at 12:24 at the same time, and it takes 2 or 3 minutes for Nagel's sister to come out, and then they drove away, which probably would have been somewhere around 12:28, 12:29, and then John's phone stops moving at 12:32. So I believe that the truck that Nagel was in was gone, and then at 12:32, that's when the accident happened.
Okay, so this 1235 time is not the entire window. Like it precedes. How long is Karen Read there? I still don't know. Like when does she get there? Nick, what do you know about this? What time? If she gets home at 1241, 1238, she's moving away. They're telling me that it's connecting at 1235, but is she there before 1235?
So she's definitely at 34 Fairview before 1235, absolutely.
Okay, what time? How long is she there?
I think the one thing me and Kevin may agree on this case is probably around 1225 is when she gets probably around 34 Fairview. So I mean, we've talked about
But the murder can't take place then because the car's behind her, right? The Ryan, Ricky, and Heather are behind them.
Yep.
Because it didn't happen that way. That's why none of this makes sense, because everybody had eyes on her outside. That you had 3 or 4 people looking out the window watching every move Karen made. They saw her vehicle move 3-4 times. Jen McCabe sent a text message around 1241, I think it was. She was already home. So none of this timeline makes sense. As far as the ping off that tower there, I believe that was while she was on her way back to 34, while she was on her way back to 1 Meadows Ave at John's house. So the reason why I believe that footage of Karen Read pulling up to John's house is missing is because if you concrete a time that she arrived home, now it makes the timeline a lot harder for them to say, okay, well, she arrived at this time when she hit him, but then it's a 5-minute drive back here, so she got home at 1241. That's why that video is missing. And we know DeChico had to have seen that video for him to put a 1241 timestamp on that.
Okay, so
somebody saw that video.
The bottom line takeaway from this is that
voicemail, but yeah, go ahead.
The bottom line takeaway is it's got to be before 1238, but like after when? 1233, 1234, 1232? Do we know?
Well, John's phone stopped moving at 1232, so I would say that was the time of the accident.
Okay, gotcha. All right, stay where you are, guys. We're going to get into some DNA evidence when we come back.
Reaction to the DNA evidence today?
It means nothing, which is why, that's why you heard us ask no questions.
John's DNA was on his clothes.
You're saying that. What was that, Karen?
John's DNA was on his clothes.
What are you thinking as you're sitting there during this part of the testimony?
That it's a waste of taxpayer dollars.
So the defense doesn't seem concerned about the DNA evidence that was presented today. This is evidence of John O'Keefe connected to the back of Karen Reed's SUV. First, you've got the hair on the rear bumper, okay, on that quarter panel. We can take a look at a picture of that, right? So the hair is found there. Now, take a listen to the DNA analyst talking about that hair.
The mitochondrial DNA profile that was obtained from the sample, the hair sample, was consistent with the mitochondrial DNA profile obtained from John O'Keefe. So therefore, John O'Keefe cannot be excluded as a possible contributor of that hair.
Okay, and there's a second DNA sample that's taken. This is from the rear passenger taillight, the casing of it. And I don't know if it's clear what the source of the DNA is. Could be skin cells, saliva, I'm not sure. But it's from a swab. Here's what the analyst had to say about that.
Profile from the extract that you received as far as EO2, from the passenger side taillight of the vehicle. What, if anything, were you able to determine based on your analysis and SDR processing of that?
Yes, so we determined that it was consistent with a mixture of 3 individuals, including at least 1 male contributor. So in this case, when comparing the John O'Keefe profile, assuming a mixture of 3 individuals, it is at least 749 million times more likely to be observed if it originated from John O'Keefe and 2 unknown unrelated individuals than if from 3 unknown unrelated individuals.
All right, Nick, now let's be honest, if that stuff wasn't there, the defense would be jumping up and down saying, oh, there's not even any DNA on her car. But there is. There is. So what's the innocent explanation for this, and should it be a concern? It's a hair, and it's some other level of DNA that's on the taillight.
So as far as the hair goes, I think at this point nobody believes that hair stayed on for over 70 miles of travel in a windy snowstorm, and not even being attached to anything. It's just a free floating hair on the bumper. There is no way that anybody, even the jury, is going to believe that hair stayed on.
Let me ask you
the entire time.
So is the allegation that it is Proctor that is putting the hair on there? If so, like when did he get the hair?
So don't forget Karen's vehicle, right? I'm sure John's driven the vehicle. That's most likely why you're going to see any of John's DNA on the car. I'm sure if they tested other places of that vehicle as well, John's DNA is going to be on that car. So as far as, who planted that hair, when was it planted, I can't specifically say who planted it. It's John's hair. It could have literally came from anywhere. How did they get a piece of hair to send to the lab to test to match up that piece of hair? Where did they get that piece of hair? Probably the same place that they got this piece of hair to put on the bumper. So as far as, I think the hair at this point isn't even going to be a question to the jury. The jury may look at the taillight and say, okay, why is his DNA on the taillight? But also, why are there 2 unknown DNAs on the taillight? And why are there unknown DNAs all over his clothes and on his shoes? So if you can't identify who these other unknown DNAs are, it really is irrelevant. So today we learned John had DNA on his clothes and also on his girlfriend's vehicle that he's been in multiple times and probably has driven.
So, Kevin, this isn't a case where, you catch a killer by having their DNA on the murder weapon, because the alleged murder weapon is the car, and obviously it's already connected to Karen Reed, so that's not an issue. It's sort of the opposite of that. How compelling do you think this is, or is this just a small piece of this puzzle that the prosecution's attempting to put together?
I think it's more a small piece, although it's a piece. It does tend to do a couple of things. For one thing, the idea of the dog attack, it just reinforces that that's impossible. Nick has gone with the idea that Proctor had the clothing in the back of his truck for 6 weeks and at some point went to the coin op and washed it. But there's DNA all over the clothing, including blood DNA, including Michael Proctor's DNA on the shirts, on the pants. Is there other DNA there? Of course there is. There's all kinds of other people that DNA is going to be on all of our clothing. Did somebody take that hair? If you're going to plant that hair, would you stick it on a vertical surface? No, you'd put it on the horizontal part of the bumper. So, I mean, these are just small pieces of the evidence. But, you know, how much of the way of the jury, we'll see.
Nick, seemed like you wanted to respond there.
No, so I know what the comment he's talking about, washing the clothes. Actually, what I said was I don't want to say they were washed, but the blood stains looked a lot faded. So that, just to correct that. Listen, we got 2 more weeks, I think. I think this trial is going to be over sometime of the week of June 24th to the 28th. The defense is, I think they're going to go 4 to 5 days. Hopefully the prosecution can finish up by tomorrow. But I think we only have about 2 weeks left of this. So whatever we're going to learn is going to come out within these next 2 weeks.
Are we going to hear voicemail messages from Karen Reed, Kevin?
Yeah, we are. And we got a long way to go. We got to get the Trooper DNA. I mean, the Trooper Garino will talk about all the data. We're going to hear the other data experts. We're also going to have the medical examiners. But most importantly, we got the CARS report that'll give the state's accident reconstruction theory. And we do need that.
And Nick, what do you think the defense is going to do in their case? And I don't expect Karen Reed to testify. They've got their own experts. Are there any other fact witnesses that the defense you would expect to bring in here to bring up a point, clarify something, or bring up some evidence that the prosecution has completely ignored?
So one quick thing, I think the defense is not going to even bother cross-examining the remainder of the witnesses that the prosecution calls. I think they're ready to put their case forward. And as far as what witnesses they have that they're going to call, we know they have the Fed experts that are going to confirm John wasn't hit by a vehicle and Karen's vehicle did not strike a body. You're going to have their Google experts come. So I think what we're going to have is, other than the plow driver, a lot of the people that the defense is going to call is going to be experts at this point.
We're out of time for tonight. Yeah. We'll do it again tomorrow. Nick Rocco, Kevin Lenahan, thank you so much.